Welcome back to the Deliverance Network, and thank you for joining us again as we journey into Holy Week. And in answer to a question from one of our viewers who asked, how can you grow in holiness? I couldn't think of a better time to address that question than now. And so this Holy Week, we're going to share with you a few elements of my own personal spiritual journey, especially these past 20 years. Some of the things that have been consistently coming from heaven, guide, as it were, as to the different things that we can do to grow in holiness, and also go over and summarize the teachings of the church and the things the church constantly is recommending and trying to help us with to grow in holiness, and that are, of course, the sacraments. And growing in holiness is the goal of our life journey, and it is the whole purpose, sum and purpose of our journey here. We kind of can sometimes get sidetracked. And so as part of that, I wanted to share with you a message from heaven, purportedly from Mary, and this very, very recently, March 15th, 2021, through Pedro Regis. And one of the key things she speaks about again is prayer, and that is a key, as it were, to growing in holiness and the spiritual journey. And she says, "Dear children, bend your knees in prayer. Do not allow the devil to deceive you. Stay with my son Jesus. Choose the narrow gate and flee away from the easy seductions of the world. Whoever wishes to be of my Jesus must reject the world." And that again is the true essence, is following Jesus and following his teachings and becoming more like him is the essence and reason for us to be here. Choose the narrow gate and flee away from the easy seductions of the world. That's the key, the narrow gate. It's not an easy thing. So, encourage one another and assume your true role as Christians. I want to see you happy already here on earth and later with me in heaven. And I'm really hopeful that the things that we share with you help you in that journey as we go through Holy Week. Well, I have shared this dream experience with you before, but I really wanted to bring it forward again as we're journeying through our Holy Week special and looking at ways to grow in holiness and become more spiritual. And this experience was from Divine Mercy Sunday, April 15th, 2007. The date of that was not really lost on me, the fact that I experienced this on Divine Mercy Sunday. And it was again an experience of Jesus, and he showed me a pile or a junkyard, almost garbage heap of broken and misshaped crosses in this dream experience. And they were various people's crosses. And the reason he was showing it to me was to illustrate something important about it. And you know how I've said we have to carry our crosses, that they can be purgative and they can be helpful for other people as restorative, or helping other people bring graces to them so that they can grow in holiness, sort of a reparation. And in this experience, Jesus said to me, and this is a key part in growing in holiness as well, he said, all is to no avail without works. So while we are called to go interiorly, we are called to let him do gentle work with us, we are called to be stripped of things of the world, help to get more out of our ego into our authentic self, all these things that I've been discussing. Our Christian journey should ultimately then turn outward to look at our neighbor and to help our neighbor. And our neighbor is everyone in the world, really. And we are to help through a variety of means. And that's why Jesus is saying this, all is to no avail without works. So we are as well to do works to benefit and help others as part of our growth in the spiritual life. And as we grow in holiness, it becomes more automatic. It arises out of love. It arises out of love for Jesus. It arises out of love for seeing Jesus in our neighbor. And it arises out of love for God. It arises spontaneously because we become like Christ and we just love. And so it becomes more elemental to our nature as we were originally created. So all is to no avail without works. We are also to do works, but to do them with the right frame of mind, and to not do them and then resent, but to do them out of a spirit of love in service to Jesus and to our neighbor. Well, I'm going to share a very, very profound experience that I had while I was away again on retreat. And this one has to do with consummative union with God. And it was a very powerful experience personally. Again, not lost on me that I experienced this while away on retreat. Sometimes God can do the most powerful work with us when we step away from the busyness of our lives and focus really on Him. But I also wanted to comment here that one of the things we have to really remember is that God is doing all the work. We're just partnering with Him, giving our fiat, saying our yes. And I often think of something that one of my priest directors said to me, and says to everyone he sees, that all is grace, all is gift. Even our crosses, they don't feel like grace, they don't feel like gift, are grace and gift from God, allowed for a purpose. And so in this experience, I had a dream of myself experiencing consummative union with God. And it was a very, very powerful, beautiful thing that I was thirsting for. And again, I think of the inner castle, I think it was Teresa of Avila, where she talks about journeying up through different levels, but it's like the circle of this interior castle. And consummative union is one of those stages of growth in holiness and in your spiritual life. And I have to tell you, in this experience, I was absolutely clamoring for it when I experienced it. And it was like a joining of myself with God, like almost like that marriage union. And it was a wonderful, wonderful thing. Nothing to fear, something to aspire to, because as we become joined with God, then we're almost two hearts sharing one heart. You think of it like a marriage thing with a spouse. You have the same heart, and you share the same desires, and you work towards things together. And so that is a big, big step in the spiritual journey. And if you have experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know when you have experienced it. If you haven't, don't worry. God is always, always, always working with us to bring us to these varying different stages of spiritual growth, and He desires our perfect union with Him. And that, of course, is something that we will achieve fully when we are in heaven with God. And so we are on that path, and we are called to grow deeper and deeper in that journey. And this is one of those stages that a lot of the different things that we can do to partner with God help to bring us to in the spiritual life. Well, part of the essence of holiness is following Jesus. And I'm sharing with you a dream experience I had of Him. I have shared it before, but it's very, very pivotal to the spiritual journey and the growth in the spiritual journey. And this one was from May the 25th, 2003, so an earlier part after my dramatic conversion 21 years ago. And it was a dream experience just before waking of Jesus. And He basically turned me to face Him in this dream experience. And then He said, "Come follow me." Very, very simple, but not so simple in its carrying out. And then He turned me to face the world. And then He said something like this. He said, "Now go out and serve others." And that was the extent of the dream experience. It was very, very short, but it was very specific. And Jesus was definitely calling me to obviously go out and serve others and follow Him. And part of that following Him is not always an easy thing. For instance, when I was feeling called to start the Deliverance Network in a dream experience, very specifically, God said to me, "The time has come for you to start sharing that which you have been receiving." That was quite a dramatic thing for God to say directly to me. I brought it to my spiritual director, and it was my director that advised me to start a website. And so in doing so, I had a period of discernment. And so sometimes we have to pause and discern in that growth in the spiritual life. We don't just go left, right, here, there, all kinds of directions. We do discern what the call is at the moment that God's calling you to as you grow in holiness. And it did take me about a year of discernment with my director, talking to other people, working through certain fears. before I actually made the step to do it. But God, I have to say, is very, very patient with us in our growth in the spiritual journey. He knows us far better than we know ourselves, and He works with us at the pace that He knows we can handle. And I've shared experiences with you before that describe how Jesus is patient, and even in my impatience I ask for more and He says no. And I want to share another little snippet that helps illustrate this, and it's of a minister that I know. He's not a Catholic priest, but he is a minister, and he had several dream experiences of God calling him, and he would see a hand in his dream experiences. Come, I want you to serve me. And he knew he was being called to become a minister. And believe me, a very dramatic life turn from what had been his work life up until that point. And he kept sort of saying no to the call, as it were. And I'm not sure of the period of time, but I know he had told me that God called him thus over and over and over again, repeatedly. And this man kept saying no. And after some time, I forget how many times he said no to the call, God finally stopped calling. But it was at that point that my friend realized the emptiness in not following the call that God was asking, and he turned and decided to go and say yes, give his fiat. And God arranged it, and this person is a minister to this day. So this is something that helps to be reassured as well. You don't have to know it all. You don't have to follow things and worry about the direction. God plants things one step at a time and grooms you and prepares you and takes you through periods to prepare you for anything He's going to call you to, which is part of that deeper call, that service to others. So that is a very, very important thing to note, that God is in the plan, doing the planning. You have to give your yes and your fiat. Allow for some time for discernment. Spiritual directors are key in that. We talk about that. And just trust that God knows exactly what He's doing. You just have to follow and say your yes and do the best you can when you do follow through on the call, whatever it ends up being in your own life. Well, I have spoken about this before, but one of the things we have to be prepared for as we grow in the spiritual journey is some kind of oppression or spiritual attack. Satan definitely does not like it when we grow in the spiritual journey, because he has some kind of foresight to know that it will do some damage to his kingdom. But we're not to be afraid of his attacks, but rather be prepared for them and to just stick to God in prayer and to basically not give the devil his day. And in this experience of Satan from September the 9th, 2005, I have shared it before, he was coming at me sarcastically, derisively, tauntingly to me, and he was trying to talk about, oh, well, aren't you a holy woman? And he was mocking and whatnot. And he was trying to basically make me feel discouraged. And Satan and evil spirits obviously try to get at you to make you feel discouraged, sometimes life circumstances that they can stir up. But the truth is that he really is absolutely powerless when we are working for God and aligned with God. And we are the ones who have power over him. And in this experience of him, I came forward and I said, not one soul does not benefit from these tears of love that I have for them against you. And as I said this, these tears of love poured forth from my face, and he was absolutely crushed to the floor by the power. And of course, that is the power and the love of God, who has overcome and who is the one really in charge. And so I would be remiss in covering how to grow holier, try to become a better person, and to go deeper in the spiritual journey if I didn't discuss somewhat some of the obstacles to that holiness and some of the perhaps spiritual attack that may come your way as a result of that attempt to grow deeper in holiness. And so it is, again, nothing to fear, but something perhaps to be prepared for and aware of. And know that if you are starting to experience some attack, maybe that's a really good sign that you're doing great work to grow in holiness, because obviously it is not being appreciated by the forces of darkness. So nothing to fear. Well, part of the climb in holiness I've mentioned is sometimes that period of stripping or purification and detachment from the world that God does for a very important purpose. And a dream experience I have shared with you before, I think a few years ago, from February 2002. So the early part of my spiritual walk, the profound spiritual walk, where I was in a dream and I was starting to climb a mountain. And then there was, as I got to the summit, this angel came and had a message for me. And he said, he tossed me a satchel and said, "We've decided to change your path." And the message, of course, from God at this point. And I said, "Wow, you're not kidding," because already in the couple of years prior to this, I was experiencing some profound things of heaven and being quite changed interiorly. But what happened after this experience is a year of circumstance after circumstance of what I would call stripping or purification, really quite some painful circumstances, but God allowed it to bring me into a different place, molding me to be able to use me for the kingdom and also to bring me into a place that He wanted to be, to help me grow in virtue, etc. So there is a path and a purpose to the things that happen in your life, even if you don't understand them at the time. It's said that when we get to the other side, see our life review, God will flip over the canvas where we only saw the knots, and as He turns it, we see the beautiful woven picture with all of the thread through the moments of our lives. So I ask you to try to keep that in mind while the times can sometimes be difficult. I think it might be of help for you. Well, thank you for joining with us for this Holy Week Part 1 special. And we're hopeful that some of the suggestions and experiences that we've shared with you help you to grow in your spiritual journey, to help you to become more Christ-like, and to help you bring Christ to the world and bring Christ to your circles. The true essence of our entire life journey here on earth is to grow in holiness. And we're called to do that particularly through the season of Lent, which we've just been passing through. And that season, of course, requires us to go a little bit more interiorly, to do self-examination, perhaps go to confession for the first time in a while if we haven't been, or go regularly, and try to become more holy, avoid sin, practice perhaps extra penance and prayer. And so we're hopeful that some of the suggestions that we've passed along through this segment has helped you to journey in that depth of holiness, because we were called constantly by God to go deeper and deeper and deeper in union with Him, and that union prepares us for heaven, which follows. So thank you very much for joining. Don't forget to like our videos if you found them helpful, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Pass the word to your friends, your neighbors, and what have you, your families, and feel free to comment, and if we can, we will get back to you. And thank you so much for joining us at the Deliverance Network. God bless.